Yo, what's going on guys? HyperX here, and today I want to talk about Spider-Man games. What are some of the best Spider-Man games? Our list of the best Spider-Man games, should I say. There are of course plenty of them, and No Way Home of course launched this month. We recently had the announcement of Spider-Man freshman year. Basically, it's a good time to be a Spider-Man fan, and with so many Spider-Man games out there to play, the question is how many of them are actually good? So today I want to talk about that because between myself and the team, we've played a variety of them. I haven't played all of them. I've played some Spider-Man games, some old, some new, but again, much like any sort of good superhero film, the way you get stronger is together, and the HyperX gaming team, as a collective, has played quite a lot of them. So we're going to talk about them today. I also want to know what your favorite Spider-Man game is, so definitely hit the comments down below. Let me know what you rank as number one. And of course, if you do enjoy this video, definitely don't forget to drop a like. But to begin with, let's get started with Shattered Dimensions. This game tried some interesting things. It definitely deserves to be on this list just because it was the inspiration for the comic storyline Spider-Verse, where of course all the Spider-Man from different dimensions come together to take on Morlun and his posse of weirdos out to kill every Spider-Man in existence. You get to play as 4 different Spider-Men from different universes: Amazing, Ultimate, Noir, and 2099. Each had a different playstyle, and some felt entirely unique to each other. Noir, of course, being one of them that had a definite sort of Arkham feel to it. The official spiel for the game was that Shattered Dimensions was a level-based third-person action-adventure game where players assume the role of one of 4 versions of Spider-Man, spanning across the various different universes. Gameplay, of course, revolved around each Spider-Man's unique superhuman abilities. Players were able to web swing, web zip, crawl walls, and use the spider sense to identify enemies or objects of interest. The combat of the game offered a large sort of variety of fighting moves, and each Spider-Man had his own fighting style. So, number 1, Shattered Dimensions. Not number 1 in order, by the way, just number 1 that I'm talking about. Moving on from there to Maximum Carnage. This is an old school thing, SNES thing basically, double dragon, beat 'em up, that kind of thing. It had a soundtrack that was so good, it had no right being that funky. This, of course, Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage was a side-scrolling beat 'em up. So of course, again, you know, we're going old school, we're going way back, but some of the greatest games are old school games. This was a side-scrolling beat 'em up game for the SNES and for the Mega Drive in 1994. The game was based on the comic book story arc of the same name, features numerous heroes including Spider-Man, Venom, and their allies from the Marvel comic fictional universe like Captain America, Black Cat, Iron Fist, Cloak and Dagger, Deathlock, Morbius, and Firestar, all teaming up to battle an onslaught of villains led by Carnage, including Shriek, Doppelganger, Demo Goblin, and Carrion. So in a list of awesome Spider-Man games, it would be a crime not to mention this one. We then have Spider-Man II, the first open world superhero game. It set the template. Webs attached to buildings, swinging was really cool, combat and upgrades were really rewarding, and perfect nostalgia for Sam Raimi era Spider-Man movies. Shout out to man like Toby, and of course Bruce Campbell narrated the game, which was insane. Treyarch developed versions are considered the sort of landmark title in the industry for being the first superhero game to incorporate that fully open world design. All versions of the game closely follow the film's plot, but did expand on it by including scenes and characters not featured in the film. Set 2 years after the events of Spider-Man, the game finds Peter Parker struggling to manage both his personal life and his duties as Spider-Man, and of course when scientist and Peter's mentor, Dr. Otto Octavius, becomes the diabolical villain Dr. Octopus after an accident, Spider-Man then has to stop him from recreating a dangerous fusion power experiment. And when you factor that a lot of games these days are building on that sort of open world design philosophy, then this one needs to go in this list. You then have Web of Shadows. Okay, so this one is a little bit of a dark horse. The missions did get a little bit samey, and the webs didn't technically stick to the buildings, which is absolutely questionable behavior. But the combat. This game had incredible combat. Web of Shadows allowed you to swap between regular suit and symbiote suit at a moment's notice. Each suit had a unique playstyle that really made the game stand out. It also had super satisfying web zip mechanics and genuinely interesting comic story, where we got to see symbiote versions of our favourite comic book characters. So overall, while it might not necessarily have been the perfect, super well-rounded title in every single aspect, this definitely brought some nut stuff to the playing field. Of course, this game also had a significantly darker story than previous Spider-Man games, as of course it revolved around symbiote invading and threatening Manhattan, which of course Spider-Man had to stop. But again, it definitely had some amazing things, which I'm sure a lot of the games in the future had at least sort of gleamed elements from. Following on from there, we then have Ultimate Spider-Man. This one again, another game with fantastic combat. Felt kind of like Arkham in combat as Spider-Man, and it also let you play as Venom, which essentially was Hulk Ultimate Destruction. It was an underrated game, and it's also based on the comic book series again of the same name, but it is definitely worth your time if you like your Spider-Man titles. Again, like Treyarch's previous Spider-Man title and SpiderMan II, the game incorporated another open world, allowing players to freely explore the fictitious representations of Manhattan and Queens, when of course not completing the main missions to advance the narrative. One notable feature again that was exclusive to this game was the ability to play as both Spider-Man and Venom, who do of course control very differently, have exclusive storylines, which of course cross over with each other, which made for a really interesting experience. Then moving on from there, we have Marvel's Spider-Man. Of course, this is going to be on the list. I mean, you know it had to be on the list. Insomniac absolutely smashed it, to the point where nowadays everyone's just like, Insomniac need to make every superhero game, just give them all the games because they are one of the best. Not gonna lie, it was a little bit rough for a few years as a Spider-Man fan. The games were okay, but compared to, say, Rocksteady's take on Batman, Spider-Man games for a while were kind of lacking. But then Insomniac, with their proven ability to make traversaling games feel like an absolute delight, coupled with their ability to make third-person combat feel super fluid and punchy, absolutely understood the assignment. Pair, of course, an original story, exhilarating swing mechanics, and the meaningful collectibles made this iteration of Spider-Man the strongest addition since SpiderMan II by Neversoft. Of course, in the main story, the superhuman crime lord Mr. Negative orchestrates a plot to seize control of New York's criminal underworld. When Mr. Negative threatens to release a deadly virus, Spider-Man must confront him and protect the city while dealing with the personal problems of his civilian persona, Peter Parker. Basically, fantastic title on PlayStation. However, that does then bring us on to the final one of this list, and my personal favourite, Miles Morales. Now this one, kind of a cheeky one because it's actually more of an expansion than a standalone title really, but if you liked Insomniac Spider-Man, then you should without a doubt be playing Miles Morales. Miles has a slightly different power set to Spider-Man, which of course allows the gameplay to do some really interesting things with puzzle solving, traversal and combat. Plus, you get to rock the suit from Spider-Verse, which is possibly one of the greatest unlockables in the game. And also, from a pacing point of view, yes, admittedly it is shorter, because of course it's an expansion, but often what you find in some of these open world games is that sometimes the collectible stuff can drag on a little bit, so this one, to a lot of people, often kind of fell in that perfect sweet spot where it was long enough to experience and enjoy the story, take full advantage of the combat, without necessarily dragging on with your typical long-winded open world activities. And of course, factoring in some of Miles's fantastic new abilities, they made combat even more exciting than before. So, this one, definitely one of our favourites, but this list comprises a ton of fantastic Spider-Man games from over the years that have gone from the very beginning to where we are now, and all of them ultimately have helped shape the series. And for that reason, I can't wait to see what they do next. But anyway, that's it for the time being. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you guys think of this list. Let me know if you've played any or all of these, and maybe if we didn't mention a game, let us know which one else you think belongs on this list. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to catch more from us, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our latest uploads. And if you want somewhere to hang out, play games, or chat all things from games to anime, food to fitness, consider joining the HyperX Gaming Discord.